Now, there have been some significant moves in the Australian economy this week, including the release of the national accounts figures. We spoke with the Finance Minister Mathias Cormann earlier this morning. So, Mathias Cormann, thank you for your time. Now, we had the third quarter national accounts come out this week. Labor didn't seem to think it was as good news. They're saying that it shows that the economy isn't growing as fast as it should.
Well, the Australian economy continues to grow when other economies around the world are shrinking. We're obviously facing some significant global economic headwinds with several downgrades in the global economic growth outlook. We're dealing with the impact of a significant drought here in Australia, yet the Australian economy in the September quarter this year grew slightly more than the economy grew in the September quarter last year, and indeed over the year economic growth has strengthened since the June quarter from 1.4 to 1.7%. Of course we want to continue to strengthen the economy further, but in the international context that we are currently in, the Australian economy is actually performing comparatively well. It is certainly performing better than it would have if Labor had been able to implement its high taxing agenda which it took to the last election.
The thing is, though, that the annual growth is only 1.7%, and that is below the budget forecast. And so isn't this going to have an impact on the promised budget surplus?
Well, we will be updating, obviously, all of the economic and other parameters at the half-yearly budget update, which will be delivered in the middle of December. That is done in the usual way. And, as always is the case, there are movements in both directions and they get reconciled. Employment growth has continued to be stronger than trend and stronger than the budget forecast. So there are always, obviously budget estimates and projections are that. They're estimates and projections. And, as you go through the year, you get more and more actual information feed into your, revised estimates and projections, and that's what we'll be doing.
But on that particular projection, if it is only 1.7%, that must be a cause for concern.
Well, there's obviously a range of factors that are relevant for your budget for estimates and projections, and nominal growth, employment growth, wages growth, CPI, you name it, and all of these get updated at the half-yearly budget update, and that information will be published in the middle of December.
And we're all very excited here at Sky News. The other figure I found quite interesting from the accounts was consumption, only increasing by 0.1% and 1.2% over the year. Does that show that these tax cuts aren't going through the way they're supposed to? If people aren't spending the money in the economy, it's not helping to stimulate?
Well, not at all. In the end, it's up to individual Australians as to how they spend their money or how they save their money. And saving more, and obviously the savings rate has been going up. That is also something that is good for the structural strength of the economy moving forward. Now, when it comes to disposable income, in the September quarter we had a 2.5% increase in disposable income, more than 5% over the year. The increase in disposable income in the last quarter was the biggest increase in more than a decade. And that is obviously the effect of our personal income tax relief. So what that shows is that people do end up with more of their own money in their pocket, and that obviously helps deal with cost of living pressures and the like. But there's nothing wrong with Australians choosing to save, to put themselves in a stronger position for the future.
Now, if I could ask you about this big announcement we had from the Prime Minister yesterday, a restructuring of a number of government departments. 5 big bosses are going. We're amalgamating these different departments. Isn't it likely that there will be job cuts, though? If you're looking at merging departments, especially to consolidate their back house functions, surely that means that you are going to reduce the number of people in them.
Well, the purpose of all this is to facilitate better collaboration across key policy areas where there are, obviously important linkages, and to ensure that the government administration is as effective and as efficient as possible. In the end, the decisions in relation to staffing positions are matters for individual secretaries. But the purpose of this exercise, it's not a savings exercise, it's not a cost-cutting exercise, it's principally an exercise of making sure that the federal government's administration is as responsive to community needs as possible and is in the best possible position to collaborate in those policy areas and those delivery areas where we need further improvements into the future.
It's just where you say efficiencies. Doesn't that mean fewer people? Doesn't that mean you do more with less?
Well, I mean, no. What I said is, I mean, of course, we want government administration to be as effective and as efficient as possible. Of course, we want that. But in the end, the decisions in terms of allocations of job positions, that's a matter for individual secretaries. But I mean, are you suggesting that we should aspire to have a less efficient public administration? I mean, is that the purpose of the question?
No, I was just asking. You said part of the purpose of these amalgamations was to have a more efficient way of administering the government, and so it doesn't.
Actually, I said a little bit more than that. I said that what this is all about is about making sure that the federal government's administration across policy and service delivery is in the best possible position to respond to the evolving needs of the Australian people, but also in a better position to collaborate across key policy and service delivery areas. And indeed, we do want the Australian government's administration to be as effective and as efficient as possible and in the best possible position to respond to evolving community needs.
Now, Ken Henry's done an interview with RN Breakfast this morning. He's talked about the tax system and the need for reform. In particular, he said that people are going to lose out really big time if we don't have significant tax reform. Do you think that this is the time for the government to be looking at a complete overhaul of the tax system?
Well, we have pursued the most significant reform to our personal income tax system since the early 1990s. I mean, under our tax reforms, legislated in 2 waves, 94% of Australians will not pay more than 30% on tax on any of their income. I mean, we got rid of an entire tax bracket. We've obviously also, made various other adjustments, which not only deal with bracket creep, but also simplify the tax system moving forward. So, we're always reviewing what else can sensibly be done. But that's what we do in the lead up to every budget and every budget update.
And just finally, we are at the end of the year. When you look back at what's happened this year, did you expect perhaps what you've seen so far? Has it been the year you thought?
Well, obviously the first challenge early in the year was to ensure that we secured the confidence of the Australian people so that we could continue to serve them in building a stronger economy and creating more jobs, making sure that Australians can be as safe and secure as possible, and ultimately, perhaps against expectations in some quarters, we were able to achieve that. And since the election, I mean, we've worked very hard to deliver on the agenda that we took to the election, and we've legislated a further $158 billion worth of income tax relief. We've legislated for improvements to the farm household allowance to provide better support to drought-affected communities, established the Future Drought Fund. We've legislated our measures to address misconduct in the energy market to bring down electricity prices. We've legislated more free trade agreements to help our exporting businesses to sell more Australian products and services around the world. And indeed, this week we were able to repeal Labor's bad Medivac laws, which had weakened our national security arrangements. So, we are just getting on with the job, working hard, doing everything we can to put the Australian economy on the strongest possible foundation trajectory for the future, but also making sure that we maximise the strength of our national security arrangements.
You didn't quite get ensuring integrity over the line, though. What are you going to be doing to make sure that that does pass next year?
Well, obviously the vote on that in the Senate was stronger than the first time round. I mean, it was a draw this time round rather than a straight loss. So it's been passed by the House of Representatives yesterday and will come to the Senate early next year, and we'll be working over the summer to gain the support of that one additional senator or 2 additional senators that we require in order to secure its passage.
Mathias Cormann, thank you for your time.